After a hot and bright and sunny Spa, Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS Endurance Cup is on the road again, and it's a wet Hockenheim that we are at this weekend. Yesterday, glorious weather, hot, sunny. Today, quite the opposite. It started raining about an hour ago. We've had a bit of a support race, interrupted by red flags and drama, but it is a very wet road that the teams now face as they venture out onto the circuit for free practice. It is a chance to learn the circuit. It's a chance to learn what it's like in the wet and where the track limits are, as straight off the road goes Luca Giotto coming into the stadium in the car collection Audi. David Addison and John Watson are sheltering from the rain. We aren't totally sure how many teams are going to go out. I suppose, John, it's worth going out for a look and make a call as to whether it's worth doing a series of laps.
Well, believe me, it is plenty wet here in Hockenheim. You can see the Rover Racing BMW squirming, trying to get the power down. And, of course, teams will go out. They're almost required to go out just to get an information. Now, Sunday is meant to be a lovely day, but you can see the problem here at Hockenheim has always been an issue. When it rains heavily, and a lot of the rain doesn't always flow from the racetrack as efficiently as one would like. This is the revised part of the circuit. This was all built back about 2002, and it is today, this is the current, what we might call the Grand Prix layout. So coming back down. Now, years ago, this used to be the final straight, the fourth straight coming into the stadium section, and been just struggling to get any type of grip or bite or whatever. The other big issue in Hockenheim, less so now with the configuration we have, has always been visibility, particularly in the high-speed parts of the racetrack. The spray coming off the back of a car, when you've got maybe 47 cars all out at one time, the spray goes up and then it comes down, and it's like driving in the worst motorway fog you can imagine.
Well, we haven't got that many cars as yet out on the circuit, but those that are discovering, or the drivers are discovering, just how wet and horrible it is. Hockenheim, home more recently of the German Grand Prix, the 10th venue to have an Endurance Cup round. And there is the Rover BMW in the hands of Augusto Farfus, who knows the circuit, but the Fanatec GT World Challenge coming to a circuit, as I say, for the first time. We did have GT2 here last year, but go back into the 1990s, and the FIA GT Championship was here for 2 or 3 seasons. And Vincent Voss, now behind WRT, was one of the people that raced here. So was Jean-Marc Gounon, Jules' father, Jérôme Policon, who runs ACA ASP, or now Acodis ASP. He raced here then. And Luca Drudi, whose son, Matteo Drudi, of course, is one of the Audi pedallers this weekend. So it's an hour-and-a-half session. We've got a car off coming into the stadium. I can see from our great vantage point up in the grandstands what's going on as people come into the stadium section and run out of traction. You're looking at Farfus heading through the Parabolica up towards the Spitzkehre and discovering just how treacherous it is out on track at the moment. But Farfus then presses on. But again, we're not expecting people to be chasing a time here, are we?
No, I mean, it's very much explore the racetrack, and as I said earlier, it is part of the character of Hockenheim, the surface, that there you get a lot of puddling. So standing water around a large part of the racetrack, and Farfus in the BMW, you've seen just when he's pushing very hard, fastest overall in the middle sector, but just struggling to find bits of the racetrack where you haven't got a puddle. And the back end of the car is that very sudden snap coming through Sachs curve, trying to get the power on, very diligent on the throttle, short, shifting all the way through. Lovely slide coming through that little right-left before you come into these penultimate double right-hand corner that leads on to start-finish straight. And barely can he keep the nose of the car pointing in a straight line. He's having to make minute little adjustments on the steering wheel, on the throttle. Now, on maybe one of the drier parts of the racetrack right now, turn 1 in the dry is a mighty quick corner, but look how treacherous it is in these conditions. And that's because you've got little, let's call them puddlets at different parts of the surface around the racetrack.
Well, number 46, the Audi, which is, of course, the car of Nico Müller, Fred Vervies, and Valentino Rossi is about to venture out by the look of it. As also there is the number 30 WRT Audi. That is edging ever closer to Silver Cup honours because they are 34 points ahead already. And we've got 2 3-hour, therefore normal point scoring races within the championship still to go. This and then the last round in Barcelona. So number 30 Audi with Benjamin Goethe at the wheel of it. could well be wrapping up the silver title before much longer.
Just for interest's sake, Augusto Farfus in the BMW is quickest overall on 2 minutes 00.91. So pretty brave, in my opinion. But of course, he's familiar with this racetrack. He's raced DTM here and probably raced in similar conditions. So he has an idea of how much grip at different points of the racetrack to expect. As we dive into, this is the still on the what you call the, it's not a chicane, it's a very fast right before you come into this slow. This is a very popular spectator area where mostly the motor manufacturers in Germany have taken up huge parts of the racetrack to entertain their guests.
Yes, you've got that great big Mercedes grandstand overlooking turn 8, which is a similar sort of feel to then this traditional stadium, which has always been a focal point of the circuit, going back to the original manifestation of Hockenheim. This was the last few corners, and it remains so. This is the unchanged bit. But of course, rather than go blasting out into the woods, you get up towards turn 2, sharp right-hander, the Bernie Ecclestone curver these days.
Yes, indeed, and obviously recognition for all that Bernie Ecclestone did for Hockenheim, because in 1976, final German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, for 77, well, we came to Hockenheim, and the reason we came to Hockenheim was because a 14-mile Nürburgring was not as particularly attractive from a television perspective as a 4-and-a-bit-mile Hockenheim. Again, running curbs, you don't really need to run curbs in these very wet conditions. Nicolas Scholler in the 99 Audi. So even with the deep treaded Pirelli wet weather tire, I suspect that the level of grip is pretty much on the limit all the way around. Whoa. Look at the way the car just snap oversteers, trying to get the power down, coming through turn 5. Then this long, there we are.
Who is that has gone 31. Off the road? 31. That is Diego Menchaca, a Mexican driver. That brings out a yellow at turn 1. Lots of runoff, of course. One of the good things about a modern-day Grand Prix circuit, we've seen it elsewhere, is that there is runoff area, but he just hits the curb, and that unsettles him.
Yeah, did I say stay away from the curbs in these wet weather conditions?
You did.
Well, there's an example. He ran the curb on the entry rather than running the curb on the exit, but the outcome for just the same thing. You unsettle the car, and because grip is really marginal in these difficult conditions, again, visibility, you can see, as the cars, they come into this section rounds turn 8, 9, and 10. I mean, you don't want to be running at, you don't need to run close to the car ahead of you. Visibility will drop dramatically.
Well, Mathieu Cairoli's Porsche has just gone fastest, 1:58.4. So only now, really, are we seeing what a lap time might be. But come the dry, which we hope we'll have tomorrow for the race, and indeed tomorrow morning for qualifying, it'll be a very different story. This weekend, we are, as I say, back to the 3-hour conventional endurance cut length of Fanatec GT.
Interesting, Nicolas Scholler takes the high line coming through the left-hand Sachs curve to stay away from the racing line, which of course got more rubber on it, so you take the higher line, which is normally the line you would avoid, but in these wet weather conditions does give you a little bit more bite.
Well, Nicolas Scholl goes through. He's been improving, obviously, in sectors, but on his first flying lap goes 11th. 2 minutes 2.649 as Pierre Dieudonné looks on at WRT and thinks it's like being at the Nürburgring, this, rather than Hockenheim, given the weather conditions. There's number 32 then, which, oddly, we aren't talking about in terms of Endurance Cup title honours. They've not had the best of seasons in endurance races. Charles Weerts, Calvin van der Linde and Dries van Voort. They might be able to take a race win this weekend. It's Dries at the wheel of the car at the moment. But in terms of the championship situation, they are quite a long way back.
And just you see out to the right of Dries van Voort, I think might have been one of the dynamic Porsches, had gone off through turn 9, a flick of the tail on the Audi. And look at the amount of work on the steering wheel Dries van Voort was having to input to try and keep the Audi pointing in a straight line. So there is the 46, and is it going to go around Nico Müller? And that's quite a long pirouette.
High-speed pirouette.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Back to Dries van Voort through Sachs curve. Again, just fighting the traction at the rear of the car. Watch the hands move quickly to the right. There we go.
And going offline, slightly to the outside line, where there might be a bit more grip. Of course, if you're new to racing here and this is your first time on the circuit, then it couldn't be the worst conditions, could it? At least the likes of Nico Muller, you've mentioned Augusto Farfus, one or two others have raced here in other categories like the DTM. Dries Van Thor's raced here as he goes quickest, though, in the ADAC GT Masters Championship, and again thumps that curve at turn 1, but he catches the slide.
He did. I don't like hitting the curb on the inside of turn 1 in these conditions, but look, visibility is deteriorating as we get more cars out on track. We're getting more spray up into the sky, you might say, and then that's just going to fall again as sort of very, very fine rain as opposed to the heavier rain, which you can't quite see if it's still falling or not, or whether. But there's look, visibility deteriorating literally almost by the corner.
Now you can see where people have been off the racetrack with the witness marks there. We've got the cars. In number this weekend, there are 49 in the entry, and we've got barely into the 20s of cars out on track. Now, again, you don't have to go out. You can lose a lot, but not gain very much in this session. Mikael Pedersen has now gone to the top of the times in the Dynamic Motorsport Porsche number 56. We're down to the 157, so the lap times are being shaved away a little as we get through the session.
I mean, there is, in essence, a clearing of the racetrack, and also as drivers acclimatized to the lack of grip. And again, Dries Van Thor running off track coming out of turn 10, having to wait until he can get back on track to get back on throttle. He's now faced with just a single car directly ahead of him, but the spray coming off it as we look at the 88. And I wonder where Raffaele Marcello is. Well, maybe he's thinking about it rather than and realizing, well, why would I want to go out in these conditions?
Yeah.
Let somebody else go out and clear or whatever, reduce the level of moisture on the circuit, and then I'll go out and put in another stellar lap and just show everybody how quick I am.
Marciello knows this place from ADAC GT, so does Jules Gounod, Danny Junqueira from DTM and Formula 3 Euro Series. So they don't need to drive around and discover what the place is like. They all know that, as through the gloom, through the rain, comes the junior BMW number 50, which has got Max Hesser at the wheel of it. Yeah, I mean, if you look out of our window, it doesn't look that bad, but when the spray hangs in the air, when you get a cluster of cars together, it changes things completely.
Yeah, well, we're maybe 30 meters above the level of the racetrack, and there is, well, 210 or 2.275 seconds up in sector 1. But again, you get a clump of cars running together. The BM's third in that line of cars. Personal best middle sector, so this could be a very good lap from the 50 junior BMW team. But visibility in the stadium, certainly looking down from where we are, David, we've got perfect visibility, but if you're in the cockpit, visibility is a totally different subject.
Absolutely right. So you've got at the moment Matteo Cairoli, number 54, back to the top. So it's Porsche, BMW, then Audi, then Porsche. Change all that. Nico Muller goes quickest now. You're looking at Max Hesser, who's down, as you can see, an absolute and a personal. Absolute best in the sector is the purple. Green is a personal best, and he goes 5th fastest. So greens are good, purples are even better, and 5th fastest goes Max Hesser in the BMW Junior team car. And again, why is it number 50? Because you're celebrating this year 50 years of the BMW M brand. So there he turns, Max Hesser. Joel Sturm has now gone fastest in the Porsche, so we may not have that many cars, relatively speaking, out on the circuit, but as people get into a run, down come the lap times.
Benjamin Goethe struggling a little bit to slow the car down into turn 8, but gets it all gathered up and then continues down what would have been the final of the 4 straights here on the old layout. There were basically 2 very long straights, then got segmented with chicanes, and then they became 4 straights, about a mile in length, or just over 2 and a bit kilometers. So Goethe's got personal best, first and second sector, where this will ultimately see him. He was, I'm just trying to see where he is, he got a time or not. So the 30 Audi coming up to the conclusion of a flying lap.
So Benjamin Goethe comes through up towards the timing beam, and again greens in the sectors, so the lap time is 50th. It is 2 minutes 1.090. So it's a Porsche 1, 2, Audi 3, Mercedes 4. Thomas Drouet now, number 87, is 4th fastest. Farfus has pitted, and we've had 1 or 2 drivers that have gone out, like Engel, Milroy, Brendan Leach, Diego Menchaca, Patrick Cuyula, Christian Kleen, Michele Beretta. They've been out, they've had a look, they've come straight back in again, thinking we're not going to achieve anything here.
I suppose a lot of the drivers are sitting in the down in the pit lane or paddock thinking, looking at the pictures, I'm sure they will be watching, it'll be reminiscent of what Spa would be like in the rain. And the irony of Spa this year is we had 4 perfectly glorious days. So we come to Hockenheim, super day yesterday. Somebody turned on the taps about 8 o'clock this morning and it hasn't stopped.
Absolutely, and it's pretty set for the day, I think. Maro Engel here in the Mercedes that he shares with Stein Schotthorst and Lukas Stoltz. Those 2 drivers that have been together all year. Maro Engel has sort of jumped from car to car, so Stein Schotthorst, Lukas Stoltz 3rd overall in endurance. But Maro Engel not on the same number of points. Down towards the Spitzkehre they come. This is turn 6 on the lap, and you just got in the dry past the point where you would ultimately get your fastest speed through the parabolica, that long gradual left, fastest part of the course. So now down to the right-hander of turn 7, short straight, sharper left at turn 8. Little kink at turn 9 on the exit here. And again, Maro Engel knows his way around here like the back of his hand. So when you consider how many other championships drivers race in GT terms these days, barely out of a car. Jules Gounon, for example, straight from Spa to the German Championship. He goes from this to Brands Hatch next weekend for British GT with Ian Loggy again. And here is Maro Engel, who's raced here in GT cars, in single-seaters, in the DTM, you name it, comes down now into the stadium. So the Sachs curve, turn 13, he goes through and wriggles his way towards the Sud curve up towards the end of the lap.
That little left-right flick was always never quite flat out. Depended a little bit how you come out of Sachs curve. But then there was the key was to set the car up for the second part of these turns 15 and 16 on to start-finish straight to get the maximum drive as you came across start-finish line. Turn 1 was used to be a much tighter corner. Now it's been eased. And in fact, in a high downforce single-seater is just all but flat out, which is pretty awesome to consider that. Oh, and around we go, and around we go.
Thierry Vermeulen, 11th fastest, but Vermeulen has a big Nico Müller-esque spin that went on for a while, going out of turn 1. He gets going again now. Right, where did Engel's lap put him? 10th fastest. Dries van Thor down to 6th now because Joel Sturm got himself back up the times. Muller has pitted as well. 88 has gone out, so Raffaele Marciello has decided that he'll go and see what can be done. He's got his armbands on and his aqualung, and out he goes.
I mean, conditions on the line as such have eased a little bit, but visibility is still an issue. Track is very wet overall. So you have to go out and just do the laps. It's information gathering. You may gain something out of it. You never know tomorrow. Maybe the weather forecast we have been given is going to be inaccurate. So you have to do the laps to get the knowledge, to give the team insight into what the car is up to. But the reality is, I don't think, or I imagine this hour and 1.5 hour session is going to be a particularly busy one across the board.
No, I think you're right. I think people will go exploring rather than anything else. They've got pre-qualifying at the end of the day, but if they're all looking at the weather forecast for tomorrow knowing it's going to be better, then they'll realise that there's not a lot that can be gained out of all of this. All you could do is get a wet setup just in case you need it. It's a bit more data, but it's certainly not relevant in terms of chasing a time this session, but it is perhaps in terms of getting a wet setup should it be needed. There's a yellow flag out in the first sector. That's the reason for why, because number 30 is rotated. It was Benjamin Goethe driving it. It still is Benji Goethe, so he's got back on the racetrack. Now on board with Marciello. It doesn't look that bad here, does it?
No, it doesn't. In fact, it looks almost reasonable. But again, on this run out of turn 2 all the way down to the hairpin bend, it's a long curve. You can see how much moisture there is just off the line. But it's almost as if the different tarmacs around the racetrack perform differently in the way they dissipate the water. So into this quick turn 7, which normally is flat as a kipper, and these conditions maybe just rolling out of it a little bit. Coast and roll into it might be the best advice. Then through turn 8, then the quick little park 9, and then the exit through 10.
Yeah, that hairpin you were just talking about, the Spitzkehre up at the top of the lap, there's a big patch there where it's been resurfaced into the braking area and through the corner. So it's not a patchwork quilt sort of a circuit, but that certainly is one area where a bit of resurfacing has taken place.
And I know that you ran the circuit last night, David, but did you have any trouble under braking?
No, and I was
just with those different surfaces. Your shoes didn't sort of slip and slide on the different surfaces.
And I was perfect within the track limits. I did ask the race director what happened if I abused the track limits, and he just shrugged and said your run is longer, which is a fair point if you ran out wide over the curb.
Indeed.
So I was very well behaved. But it's interesting just to see where little bumps are in the road, where, again, as we say, these re-tarmac bits are. Right, Marciello goes 11th fastest. That's a fairly gentle lap, but it puts him there or thereabouts. A couple of seconds, nearly 3 seconds away, but it's in the drive. We need to see the times. Yeah,
it didn't look entirely comfortable coming through turn 1. He did stay away from the curb on the apex, and then, of course, car coming, I think it might have been the 32 Audi coming back out. So we go back to the Iron Dames, leaders in the Gold Cup Championship. They're a stunning drive from this team in Spa 24 Hour. They won that Gold Cup class, and massive points all for the car and team.
Indeed, yes, as you say, they are ahead by 8 points from Ollie Milroy, Brendan Areed, Frederick Schandorf. So the Gold Cup, new for this year, looks like it's going to go down to the wire to give us a really good fight. And right now, Alex Malikin is the fastest there, but Rahel Frey is behind the wheel of the Ferrari. Now, again, she knows her way around here from DTM, from German GT races, from the Audi R8 Cup. So the more you go through the entry, the more drivers you find that do have pretty good track knowledge.
It's a very heavily used racetrack across all the European championships. Yeah. GT in particular, of course, DTM is the most notable returnee to the circuit. Currently, Formula One is not on the calendar in Germany, so whether it will return to Hockenheim or any other venue in Germany is, I suppose, up for discussion with the owners of the rights.
Indeed so. Well, we've got news of a couple more spinners. Vermeulen, I think we'd already touched on, as across the line is about to come Rahel Frey. 91 had a spin as well. That was the Malikin Porsche. And Alex Malikin sharing with Ayanchen Guven, who we saw at Spa, and is a regular Porsche racer in the German Championship, but he's going to be a man to watch in that Allied racing car. Right, Rahel Frey up towards the end of the lap then. Here, I mean, we're talking about how it doesn't look too bad. This section of the circuit is a lot wetter than it seemed to be out at the Spitzkehre when we were on board with Marciello. Yeah,
and Rahel Frey caught the left rear on just on the edge of the curb, and you saw that little sort of snap oversteer and having to correct it then, getting out of the way as the Mercedes dives down the inside, and I think that was good use. Rahel Frey getting out of the way of the Get Speed Mercedes. And it's at a different level of performance compared to the Ferrari, but just tippy-toeing it through this final 2 corners.
And in fairness, Rahel Frey, new into the session, she's yet to do a flying lap, whereas the number 2 Mercedes, Amaro Engel, has been out a little bit longer, so he's a bit more comfortable with the puddles, goes through. Engel's lap was a 59, that was slower, and Rahel Frey goes over the timing line, 27th then, but a gentle first lap, really, to have a look at the state of the circuit. Heroics in this session, not called for, as there, Audi number 25 out of the Santalok team, Christopher Mies, the old stager, but in the junior team here.
Well, an old stager, but with very wise head, very good hands. And again, look, where's the car gone? You can't even see the tail lights.
Yeah.
This is the quickest part of the racetrack. So visibility here, down to the far end of the circuit, down to turn 6, Spitz. How do you pronounce that?
Spitzkehre.
Spitzkehre.
And there through the puddles. Look how much water there is on the road that he's squeegeeing his way through with the Pirelli wets. Christopher Mies chasing after Rahel Frey. Again, Christopher knows his way around here, experienced German GT racer. But it's tricking us, the circuit. It doesn't look that bad, as we keep saying, from our vantage point, but at certain places around the circuit, the pictures tell a different story. And as ever, big thumbs up to our cameramen who are braving the elements. They've been out in this for a good hour or so, even before the first track activity of the day started to be on post. So they were wet enough even before the first cars came to the circuit. Now they are out for the day.
Yeah, and oh, which Mercedes is that just caught there?
That Marciello.
I don't know. It's hard just to tell which car it is. It's gone into the gloom.
I thought that was Raffaele. It is Marciello, is it not? It is, it's 88. It's the Acodis ASP car. There it is, Mar on the windscreen on the Lumi rank. Yep, Raffaele has had a moment.
Well, maybe he's going to come in because you can see he's dropped off the pace a little bit, but I don't know which turn. Was that turn 7 he made that mistake? Because that's a pretty quick flick to the right.
Well, he's just coming into the stadium. You can see him out of the window. So
here we are.
He is on board.
I think this is turn 7. Is it? I think that might be turn 7. And a nice 360 and a 360 and 100, whatever, 80. The worst thing is he's facing the traffic, sitting there, gets the car rolling again. And there is the exit of turn 7, so into turn 8, a tight left, but I think that was where the scene of the incident occurred.
So top speeds going into that corner, and of course they are affected by the weather. 185 kilometers an hour from the brave Max Hesse and Nico Müller. Valentino Rossi is now at the wheel of number 46. Now, have we seen Valentino in the wet this year? No wet at Spa, wasn't wet at Imola, wasn't wet at Paul Ricard. A spin for Max Hesse, having just been talking about his bravery over at turn 7. He's lost it at turn 1. So Valentino Rossi, new circuit for him in a car, of course, and he's thrown into the rain as well. And Hesse is now able to get going, but that's an awkward place to be beached.
Bad place to be sitting sideways onto the flow of traffic, and wisely there is Marciello into the pit, so they're reloading. Thomas Struy is going to 87, I beg your pardon, so they're reloading the car with more fuel as we look at the 46. Now, I wonder whether the expertise and skill of a MotoGP rider pays dividends in these very much more tricky wet weather conditions than the regular dry ones. Valentino is sort of wandering around a little bit, trying to get out of the way, but well, there we are on board with the Maestro as the sister car goes through. So let's stay on board with Valentino as the Audi head. You can see the back end again under power, just snapping into oversteer. Visibility suddenly becomes an issue. Stays on the left side of the track. Most drivers on the entry into turn 2 have been running in the middle of the track. I'm not entirely sure why that's their chosen option, but maybe because again of the volume of water. Wow, a big slide, look at that coming out of turn 3. Valentino had to get out of the throttle and check up and wait to make sure that that wasn't going to be a car that was going to end up right in his trajectory. And then the run down, and again he could see his car catching water and just snapping. So tricky conditions, even though we see it from the commentary booth as looking not that bad. From driver's eye line, it is treacherous.
It is indeed. So Valentino Rossi pressing on. This car second fastest, but on a Nico Müller time. But now it's about giving Valentino track experience and some experience of these conditions, which he hopes he's not going to face tomorrow. They all hope they're not going to face tomorrow.
I mean, he's getting entertained watching the Audi directly ahead of him, but even he's got his hands full. And maybe again the skill of a MotoGP rider will show a level of delicacy from Valentino's hands, where in the drive I've seen him quite busy behind the steering wheel, but today I would say those movements are much less, and just using that inbuilt sense of balance that he has learned from many years in the saddle, beginning to give him some advantage over maybe other competitors.
Well, he's coming up towards the Sud curve now, so the last corner, this double apex right, short straight connecting the two. You can do it as an arc if you get the line and the pace right. Onto the pit straight now, so up towards the line. Hockenheim, one of the few circuits where you've got the start and finish line in the same place. So quite often we have a start line further down the pit straight than the timing line, but here it is one in the same. Valentino Rossi goes through. That lap was a 2 minutes 5. The best of the session is a 1 minute 56.
Oops.
That said, he's learning all the time, so expect that to come down and down and down. As you look at number 71 then, which is Antonio Fuoco at the wheel. Now, of course, this is another of the Iron Lynx Ferraris, and Antonio Fuoco second in the championship, chasing after Gounon, Junqueira and Marciello. Fuoco, Davide, Rigon, Daniel Serra need 11 points this weekend to draw equal, or to outscore the Mercedes by 11 points to draw equal. And then they've got one more round at Barcelona to come in October.
Under, I would say, normal dry conditions, I would have thought the Iron Lynx Ferrari team would be looking forward to Hockenheim. I think the nature of the circuit will play to their car's strengths. So having to wait and see what the ultimate outpace is going to be compared to their principal competitor, which is that a car off to the right. I just caught something. Or was it me just thinking there was a car? Was it a ghost car that we caught just in that glimpse of the 71 Ferrari exiting turn 1?
Not sure. You can see how wet it is up at turn 2 with the amount of water on the lens there. The camera crew battling through the conditions to bring us the pictures as Antonio Fuoco then presses on. Now this car has spent the last 10 minutes plus in the pit lane, so it has been out for a look. They've gone back out. Now that more and more cars are out there, hopefully dissipating the rain, that tempts even more people out because they think they might be able to do something. But he's got himself in traffic now, Fuoco, as he comes up towards the Spitzkehrer. There's a yellow in turn 3, sector 3, briefly, but it's been brought back in again. Didn't see the cause of that.
It's the far end of the racetrack and this return leg that still appears to be getting the biggest amount of moisture, or it isn't clearing off the racetrack. Whatever the construction of the tarmac is, it's not draining away. I mean, even at those relatively low speeds, the amount of water that really where the tire is clearing, you can see is significant.
So then down towards the stadium, or the Motordrome if you prefer, comes Antonio Fuoco, and getting a report that 163 has run wide. That might have been the most recent yellow flag, the Emil Frey Lamborghini of Marcus Pavro and Baptiste Moulin Macheldoorbecker. Now what can Fuoco do? He's down, isn't he, in the 2 sectors, so this is an explore, it's not a time, no, really, from the Italian
massive,
driver.
over 6 seconds away. So it's not an out, other than go out and check it out and see with the Ferrari probably running in its dry weather configuration. The team, I suspect, hasn't bothered to go and put on a more compliant wet weather setup and ends up 23rd, and look at the times. There is the 46 back into the garage, hopefully. It'll be a dry Valentino Rossi. So Valentino was on track a minute ago.
Oops.
Oh, and now was that what I saw? I did see a car and I couldn't identify it. But that's coming into the stadium section. So there we watch Valentino. Did he stay off the curb? Well, it looks like he did, but just caught maybe the curb on the exit. And that was the beginning of a long rotation. And you know, you get dizzy there. I mean, that's got to be the best part of a 720, almost, certainly a 700.
Well, into the gravel, but able to drive out of it. The wet gravel compact, and he drives out. The car looking almost rally-esque because it's now dripping in the garage. And Valentino will get out while they check the car over. In fairness, we've not seen him have too many dramas. I know he was in the wars a bit at Zandvoort, but it's not that he's been a regular at throwing the car off the road in this baptism of fire season in the championship. So that's a relatively rare off for Valentino, and let's be fair to him, he's not the only one in these conditions that we've seen getting it wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a more baptism of rain than anything else. And again, I mean, visibility, 3 cars relatively close together. Again, at ground level, the visibility available to the third of these 3 was waiting for it to pop inside the Porsche. Coming through these final 2 turns. If you can, in dry conditions, you can more or less make that curve one big arc. As we go back to the 32, and oh dear me.
That's Dominic Fishley.
Yeah, we just saw that car running a minute ago on track.
Well, that's the car that's fastest after Joel Sturm's earlier time. He's about to get it wrong again, isn't he? Through turn 1, that's live, that's on a replay. That's Dominic Fishley spinning at the first corner. Fishing for traction, but anyway, he gets going again now. The Allied Racing Porsche rejoins. Dominic possibly needs to pit now and just regroup, calm, and have a think about what he's been learning out on track rather than have another off as he tries to press on. But no doubt the team will be on the radio advising him. We've got, by the way, number 31 which is Lewis Proctor, under investigation in his WRT Audi for speeding in the pit lane. Well, when you're being investigated, the data is already there, so I think we can safely say that he has been speeding in the pit lane, or that car has at least. Right, we are with 54 minutes of this 90-minute session still to go, so we've got through the first third. It's been full of incident. We are now looking at more and more cars venturing to the circuit. We're into the 30s now out of the 49. There's another Audi that's run wide into the stadium, and it was Dries van Thor. Just caught a glimpse out of our window as you look now at Dominic Fischli. As I say, this car is the fastest, not with his time, but Joel Stern from earlier on, but it is still the fastest car in the session, this Porsche, as he comes now towards the Motordrome, the stadium once more. Back onto the power here. It's a deceptive part of the circuit, this, because you've got quite a lot of little marshals and vehicle access points. And you think, which one am I turning in? And then eventually you get to the bottom of the straight, you think, oh, that's the corner. Then you suddenly have something to aim at and you turn in.
There's again, at track level, visibility is not great, and of course you're dependent also within the cockpit that you've got good demisting within the ventilation within the car to keep the windscreen clear, and also the windows around you want to be able to look in your mirror. Some cars, of course, use a video form of rear view, but you can see virtually in your mirrors. You don't see anything. You might see some headlights, but it'll be difficult to identify whether that's a quick car or somebody that's maybe just popped out of the pits.
Sure. Now, as you look at 188, the rebuilt McLaren after its Spa accident of Enrico Chavez, just to make the point that John touched on it earlier on, this is the new configuration of Hockenheim, new-ish, but of course, back in your day, John, you'd have gone hammering out into the woods and hammering back, and with all of the trees, a day like this must have been thoroughly miserable because the rain just used to hang there and be depressing, visibility was horrible, it was just a difficult place.
One of the most unsettling experiences was driving out into that forest in conditions like this with a group of Formula 2 cars around you, but you couldn't see them, you could hear them, the total disorientation, and not an experience I'd wish on any race driver. And the quick and the brave might drive through it. A lot of others would back out of it and just give themselves that little bit of margin for error, because you can see here just how much rain there is, how much spray there is, and there's no trees really close now to the sides of the racetrack.
Sure.
So the spray dissipates more easily. But back in the good old days of, certainly in my experience, 1970 or 71, it was not a pleasant experience whatsoever.
And it was a day not dissimilar in terms of weather that Didier Pironi had his career-ending accident.
1982 coming into basically the final straight down into this entrance into the stadium. An avoidable accident, I regret to say.
Were you on track at the time?
At the moment it occurred, I think I might have been in the pits.
Right, yeah.
Because frankly, there was no point.
Yeah.
It was a free practice session, and we'd done what we needed to do, and there was no point to go out and try and be the quickest overall. But unfortunately, Didier did have a slightly different approach to it, and he wanted to illustrate that he was the man that was going to be the world champion that year, and he took a very, very high level risk, and regrettably, it ended his Formula One career.
Sure. And the day after, Patrick Tambay had his first Formula One win, didn't he, to rally the spirits of Ferrari. But a great, great shame. Now, we've had one or two more people falling off the road coming into the stadium. This is Jack Aitken for Emil Frey Racing. So he's raced here in Formula Renault, he's raced here in GT cars, and we've not really touched on the Lamborghinis as yet. They haven't been setting the timing screens alive, but they'll get there. Jack Aitken on his first flying lap, the car's first flying lap. Comes up behind the Wet Panda Motorsport Mercedes, and Jack Aitken goes through up to 15th fastest, that first flying lap at 1:58.5. So he's about 3 seconds off the absolute gun time, but that's his first effort.
Certainly not sparing it, coming into turn one, running the curve on the inside, the car looking like it didn't appreciate that level again, clipping the curve in turn two, and then now onto the wettest part of this 4.5 kilometre, 2.8 mile Grand Prix circuit at Hockenheim, and again the water that's on that part of the racetrack is still, actually sometimes you think it's actually getting worse. And Jack Aitken now straightens it up, stays in the middle of the racetrack. Interestingly, doesn't use the full width on the entry. Gets a good entry, gets a good exit in fact, so maybe he knows something, he's feeling something through the seat of his pants that don't do the conventional thing, go where you think the grip's greater, runs the curve on the exit of turn 7 but gets away with it. Then onto the brakes and overruns through turn 8, then 9 is only a mere curve, then onto what was remaining of the original 4th leg back into the stadium. Middle sector fastest overall.
That's impressive on his 2nd flying lap of the session. So he dropped 3/10 in the first. He's made up 53 thousandths over and above everybody else in the next. Dries van Thor is at the top of the times again,
he
incidentally.
hit the gravel.
Oh, Jack. 2 wheels in the gravel, ran it wide. Again, he's got the benefit of being able to dig himself out the other side with that compacted gravel, giving him a bit of traction. But as he comes then now into the Sud Curve, it was the lap that should have been.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be a lap, certainly would put him into the top 6. I'm not sure that first sector time was good enough, but he never got a chance to see what his final sector time, without that little brief interruption with 4.1 seconds. Quite a lot of time indeed lost. So 16th overall, but the pace with Jack Aitken and the pace of the Lamborghini is certainly clear and obvious.
Thomas Neubauer in the Gulf liveried Audi has just gone 5th. There is Jack Aitken then, number 63 Lamborghini up now to turn 2. Wiper working overtime, 47 minutes of the session to go. Number 38, the Jota McLaren, we've not really seen much of yet in the session, but Ollie Wilkinson is at the wheel. I'm thinking he's not raced here before. If he has, he's not done many laps around it. So Ollie Wilkinson goes now down through the right-hander of turn 7. This is 8, so slow the car down.
Doing what a lot of drivers are appearing to do, whether out of choice or circumstance, but run wide as you come into turn 8, and then the exit out through turn 10. You can hear there's a bit of wheel spin catching the curb. Dries van Thor on the 32 Audi currently quickest 155.4, and I don't think we got to see that lap when Van Thor went quickest, but waiting to see what Jack Aitken's going to do as we watch Oliver Wilkinson through the Sachs curve. One of the names that's been a part of this Hockenheim circuit since I came here in 1970, and one of the most popular viewing areas around the whole stadium area.
Yes, and those tribunes that the big events are always busy, looking over a great section of the circuit where you've got sight of the cars through a good proportion of the circuit, lots of corners. So that's the fastest car. Dries van Thor quicker again last time. 155.4.
As he lost it, I can't make up my mind if he did. If he didn't, he certainly would get a medal for that.
Yeah, it was a good save.
Because that was a big loss.
But look at this lap, personal best, absolute best. Dries van Thor might be out of the hunt for the championship, but as he climbs the curbs, he wants more race wins. He's rather commandeered the car, hasn't he? We've not really seen Charles Weerts nor Calvin van der Linde behind the wheel of it. And Charles Weerts, I don't think, does know the place that well, but up towards the timing line now comes Dries van Thor. The last lap was a 55.4. He breaks the beam and does a 54.497. So quicker still. Dries van Thor goes through and improves the lap time. He's over a second quicker than anybody else now.
Yeah, and he looks as if he's hooked up to the conditions as the Ferrari Fuoco. Not really seeing something from that car, 15th quickest currently. I mean, it's all in relative terms academic, but Dries van Thor's taking it very seriously indeed, and it's almost as if it's making up for what was a pretty poor by their standards Spa 24 hours, and just for your own, if you want to call it vanity, ego or whatever, to show just how good I am in very demanding conditions, and how good the Audi also is. Don't forget, it may have had a bad Spa, but there's opportunity here to claim back that performance, the kind of domination that we've seen in the past from WRT.
So drivers looking for traction, looking for a drier run up towards turn 2. Fuoco there. And 16 fastest is the Ferrari. James Collado is the quicker Ferrari driver, and here 14 fastest is where you find the sister car, number 51. So it's James Collado down now to turn 16, the exit of the Sud curve, up towards the timing line. And that puts him 5th. That was a good lap.
Yeah, very good indeed. Just looking at the back of the Ferrari, you can see that light there. That is there to give a following driver an indication of where that car will be in the gloom. So you may not see the car, but you might hopefully see something of a rear light flashing will give you an indication as to quite how close you might be.
Baptiste Moulin in number 163 with Marcus Pavarud and Michael Dorbecker, graduates of GT4, Pavarud and Lamborghini Super Trofeo Dorbecker, but Baptiste Moulin we've seen in GT3 before, comes down towards the Motodrome, avoids the curb. Others have been off into the gravel there in fair number. Survives this time around. Through the Sachs curve at turn 13, and now accelerates through that little kink, that little wriggle up towards the Sud curve. He's got Fuoco behind him on the track, so you've got the Lamborghini here with the Ferrari there behind it.
So I just wonder how Fuoco will deal with the Lamborghinis too far back to think about an overtake coming into turn 1. So maybe possibility up into turn 2, depending who gets through turn 1 the quickest or with the least amount of deflection. So the Lambo does pretty good, and Fuoco may have decided to not get involved, just let the Lamborghini pull away. Jack Aiken, fastest overall sector 1. Well, that's quick. And thousandth up in the middle sector.
Absolutely. So this could be the best time in the session. So Jack Aitken, who races for Emil Frey not only in Fanatec GT but also in the German Championship now, comes up towards the Sud curve. And actually, he's done pretty well for traffic on this lap, seemingly. He's not got too many people around him. The time to beat is a 54.4. It is looking good as Jack Aitken does a 54.3, goes top by a 1/10 of a second over Dries van Tor. So Jack Aitken is the fastest for Lamborghini.
Certainly those last few corners, Jack Aitken looked like he'd got his car in that area where he wants it to be. He got a good drive off the Sud curve, kept the car pointing straight, had the power on, but no excessive movement, slides, oversteer, snaps, whatever, and he gained the benefit. So it's 0.112 of a second quicker than the 32 Audi.
Right, Mauro Engel has also been chipping away. He's got that car 4th now, 6/10 away from the top time. And as we're into the second half of the session, it's starting to becoming a little bit more competitive. We've got enough cars now, 36 of them have ventured out to get page 2 of the timing screen in operation. And Engel's going to bail, isn't he? Comes for the pit lane.
But he'll be comforted to know that he had personal bests in sectors 1 and 2 as we go back to the 88. So track conditions have changed a little. Wave yellow flags coming into the stadium section. So who has rotated? Oh, there it is. Is that? It's not the 32, is it?
No, that's in the pits, but it's certainly an Audi. It's a car collection Audi, isn't it? I think that's either 11 or 12. And number 11, if it is, that will be who at the wheel of it? Thierry Vermeulen was in the wheel earlier on. Hugo Vallon, that's it, has gone off the road in number 11. So yeah. It is 11, and it's in the stadium, I think.
It is. It's coming into the stadium, just the right-hand corner. He's just lost it, as we saw.
You can see it out of our window. He's just getting going.
He's just getting rotated. So Danny Junqueira behind the wheel of the 88, having taken over from Raffaele Marcello. Looking skyward. I don't know whether the sky's beginning to clear a little bit more than it was earlier. Oh, stay away from that tar bale. Lucky, just managed to miss the end of it. No damage done other than just a matter of pride. Now there's a car I think could be a threat if the race is a dry race. The 111 JP Motorsports McLaren. Haven't seen much of that. The sister car, the 112. Christian Clean behind the wheel.
Now another good lap is being pieced together by Enrique Chavez here, number 188 McLaren. He's done a personal best and an absolute best. Christian Clean, the Austrian driver, comes then now through the Sachs curve. The McLaren's getting increasingly competitive. These JP Motorsport cars, Patrick Kroprinski's team, coming now into the last turn of the lap, the 16 Sudkurve corner. So Christian Kleen is currently 30th, having spent quite a long time in the pits, but now goes back up to 6th fastest. Good effort.
Yes, didn't look particularly quick in the stadium, but that doesn't mean anything, because you don't need to look quick in wet weather conditions. What you need to do is ensure there's the sister car. Oh, tippy toes around.
Yeah.
That's through the Sachs curve.
But Enrique Chavez in the Garage 59 car, he is now the overall fastest. I said he'd done a personal best in the middle. Well, Enrique Chavez, 188, has now gone to the very top as you look at Christopher Hauser in number 12 car collection by Trezor Audi. Now, this car had all sorts of dramas at Spa and subsequent. It was given some mileage yesterday with Nico Verdonk, the BOP driver, at the wheel to try and clear the problem. Rather than let one of the team drivers do it, that would have counted as testing. But by putting the BOP test driver into the car and bring the feedback, that was to help the team try and get to the bottom of whatever the problem was.
Adam Ateki in the Boutson,
yes,
gone quickest.
He has.
53.6. Again, where has that come from?
Well, does that suggest that it's drying finally?
Well, it looks as if there may be a improving line, but all of a sudden, I mean, I had to look down at my list of runners and riders, and that sort of caught me slightly unawares. That's a goal. Is that a Gold Cup car?
Ateki is for Boutson, and it is gold. You're right. Yeah, I mean, as more
Boutson
people
racing, we haven't. I mean, normally we would expect to see them topping any session.
But as more people go out, so they squeegee away the water, so the times improve, so people think it's worth going out, so more people go out, so water gets squeegeed away. The busier the road, the quicker it should become. We've got another absolute best in the sector, and it's from Michel Gatting now in the Iron Dames Ferrari. There is 188 Enrique Chavez. He was the fastest, but not anymore. He's nearly half a second behind Adam Ateki.
Well, that time from the 10 Audi has sort of caught me. I suspect probably half the pit lane as well, rather unawares.
I think it's going to get really busy towards the end, isn't it, as they all go scampering back out.
So top speed from Race Vision is, and that's coming in. Well, that's the top speed at the quickest part of the racetrack, just under 250 kilometers per hour. That'll be here on the run down to the far end of the circuit, down to turn 6. So trying to slow your car up in these varying conditions.
Yeah.
And it's notable that the racetrack has got a big variation in the amount of wetness over the lap.
Just had a Porsche re-emerge from the gravel coming out of the stadium, and it was 54. So Alessio Picariello it was, the Belgian driver, off the road. But it might be because it's busier. Oh, there's another spinner in the middle of the stadium, and it's one of the BMWs. I was going to say that the way that the session is coming alive now, it might be because it's busier, it might be because it's drier. Chavez, personal best, absolute best, and the yellow flag in the stadium is just about to be withdrawn, so that won't affect him, but the traffic will. Look, he's got himself rather stuck behind one of the Ferraris there, and gets through now on the inside line.
He's got his momentum, and he may well have also been able to build up a little bit of temperature in the wet weather tyre, because getting wet weather tyres is not just the tread pattern that clears the water. You need the compound to get temperature in it to give you the grip when you're not having to clear the water. So if Chavez comes across, completes another lap, and remains second. Lost time in that final sector due to the traffic.
Due to the traffic, absolutely right. Just a quick look out of the window a moment ago proved that the rain is still heavy. There, after its moment, is number 54 Porsche coming into the pit lane. A report also that number 50, which is Hesse, Verhagen and Harper's BMW, had a spin, clocked that out of the window.
Yeah, the Porsche's hit something, so it looks like it's a tyre smear. There's a bit of damaged bodywork. You can see the team are taking bits off it. And one of the joys of a Porsche is it's like a modular race car. There are very few bits that you can take off. So it's the way they've engineered the car, designed it, that one piece comes off with the headlight and all you got is one connector. I mean, a really, really clever piece of race car engineering around a car that's designed to do 24-hour races.
So the Come To You sponsored car in the pits. Right, we are on board with number 88. It is Danny Juncadella at the wheel. John, talk us round.
Into turn 2. Again, everybody runs to the right, coming up to this corner, then back to the left, then turn in. So it's into 3, which continues into 4. And really just struggling to get traction. Then it continues round into 5. And just essentially keep an eye out for the wettest parts of the racetrack and stay off them. This is looking better. The track surface here is looking better, but then you come down to the hairpin bend, and again you can see how, look at that, it's like a skating rink, just offline, then hard on the throttle out of 6 up into turn 7. Listen, listen, listen. Yeah, he's having to be circumspect, and then down a couple of gears again. How wet it is coming to turn 8, and just gently on the throttle, pick it up and squeeze it, don't thump it, then through 9, then back to 10, and this is where you can get caught out on the exit, the curbing there. If you run it, it could snap oversteer, then a short sprint down into the entry into the stadium. Again, another corner. It's an off-camber corner, easy to run too wide too early in the exit. That curbing or that sort of runoff on the outside is there to catch you. Now into Sachs curve, the famous bank Sachs curve. Stay low if you want, stay high if you prefer. Then back on the throttle, pull a gear maybe, yes, through the left, through the right. Don't be too ambitious this part of the circuit, because here, turn 15 and 16 is where you want to start doing the hard yard, but he's going into the pit lane. Well, there we are.
So in comes Danny Juncadella, just over 32 minutes on the clock. This is a look at what a Ferrari is like in the wet. So 71, this is the car that Antonio Fuoco has commandeered for the session.
I would imagine the Ferrari might be a little bit more nervy, twitchy because of its configuration, mid-rear engine. So down into the stadium entrance. Clear road ahead of him, so visibility not a problem. Staying in the middle of the Sachs curve. Can get the power down. He has to feather the throttle a little through the left, through the right. And then into these final. Oh, that looked a bit uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. I think he decided rather late in the day, I'm going to come into the pit lane as well. So that slide at the back of the car persuaded that's the time to come in.
So Antonio Fuoco down the pit lane. Right, now let's see if we can get a lap out of anybody. This is Charles Weirts finally giving it a go in number 32 Audi. This car 6th after the efforts of Dries van Voor earlier on.
So into the stadium comes Charles Weirts. Touches the curb on the inside, deflects the car out to the left. Then down a gear on the brakes, stays lower than we've seen from others. That's his preferred line. If it works for you, then use it. But again, look at the snap oversteer coming out of the Sachs curve. And again, maybe I would, if I was in Charles Weirts' situation, I'd maybe run a gear higher to get away from that, the extreme torque that you get with higher revs. Let the motor pull me rather than push me. But when you're young and keen, you do these things. You're going to maximize all the engine horsepower rather than relying on the pulling power that torque gives you. So out of turn 1, up the shorty straight, down the gears, into turn 2. And again, short shifting the back end as it goes through 3, just snapping into oversteer. Now the car settles down a bit. Visibility not quite so nice for Charles Weirts. Flat out through turn 5, car stable here, but just when you get down into 6, then you go into a much different track surface and a much less grippy. There you see, look at the amount of water. It is never dissipated in turn 6. But again, good traction off the corner. Then through turn 7, listen again, is he flat or is he being... He's down again. And again, a wider entry, staying away from what looked to be the better line. Then, oh, Charles, maybe you were watching the car ahead of you rather than watching what you were doing. And it all looks a little bit uncomfortable right now for Charles Weirts. Hasn't got the rhythm and flow that we saw maybe from Dries van Voor, and of course the pace that Dries van Voor was carrying was probably greater than we're seeing from Charles Weirts. So it's not a pleasant experience
I think he's backed right out of this lap.
Huh?
He's backed right out of it.
Oh, he has, yes.
Yeah. I would also offer you that it's got heavier again, the rain, because very, very few improvements in sectors are coming. This is how it looked from the outside.
Oh, there she goes, there she goes, there she goes. Oh, that's a football song, isn't it? And he's having to really, really struggle. No, a new mustachioed. Oh, dear.
So I think Adam Ateki is very happy about his lap, but keeps him fastest. And fastest by very nearly half a second. Right, half an hour just under remains. It's been busier and it's been livelier than we thought. We were watching the mid-jet race that was on track before this session. We were pondering how many teams would take advantage of the 90 minutes to go out. Well, the answer has been 39 to 49.
I mean, I'm surprised that we've seen as much track action as we have had, because so looking forward to Sunday with qualifying around the same kind of time that cars are on track right now, anticipating it being a dry day, and therefore Sunday morning hopefully it'll be a dry track. There is the car currently that is still quickest overall. Adam Ateki did that time, what, some 15 minutes ago now, and has yet to be challenged. 153.6 in the BMW pits. Augusta Farfus, something on his mate's camera. Dare to think what they're looking at.
Nick Yellowly in the middle.
Yeah, well, maybe a bit of Brazilian or something or other. Yeah, exactly. That's what he thought too.
Now that was a car that we saw a lot of at the start of the session. Nick Katzberg has just done the most recent time, but it's 17th, suggesting that there's more to come from that.
But all I can assume is that some people have stuck with a dry setup, and others have opted for confidence reasons to give their drivers a more compliant wet weather setup. But we don't know. That's purely speculation. But drivers, as they accustom themselves to these conditions, as they have course to 21 Ferrari, Hugo Delacour, Alessandro Balzar, and Cabrias, whatever. So it looks good. Looks like it's got a reasonable amount of comfort for the driver. Nothing that would make you feel uncomfortable. So it comes out of turn 3 and 4, down through the long curve at 5, and then the run down into the hairpin bend down at turn 6. 26 minutes of the session to go. There's you can see there on the left of your picture, the very, very wet part of the racetrack, just holding standing water. So Alessandro Balzan makes his way out of turn 6 up to turn 7. Is he flat? Well, we can't really tell.
No, we've got our 40th car on track because Kim Louis Schramm has just gone out in the second of the Attempto Audis, number 66. Interesting how some have gone out at the start and parked, others have left it late and then go out for a look. 26 more minutes of the session to go. 22 has had a spin and rejoined, we are hearing, which is the allied Dominic Fishley, Patrick Matisse and Jules Sturm Porsche again.
This Ferrari, the 21 of Balzan, is personal bests by a significant amount. So currently in 30th position. So this should see it elevate itself up, certainly into the top 20, I would have thought. And Balzan, again, just watching the way the car is, the momentum and the pace, looks as if he's not uncomfortable in these conditions. A nice exit through turn 16. So maybe 16th position. 26th, though, a bit ambitious on my part. I thought it might have been a bit quicker than that overall, but certainly he's improved, and that's the principal objective. So Kim Louis Schramm in the 66 Attempto Audi. So on to the remnants of the 4 long straights that used to be the major part here of the Hockenheim racetrack into the stadium. Getting a bit of a hurry up from behind, and that's the 30, the Gulf liveried Porsche, or the Gulf liveried Porsche. Well, that's a Freudian slip. Gulf liveried Audi. So whereabouts is that? Yeah, that car is currently in 7th position. Not the car in the picture, but the Audi behind, the Gulf liveried Audi. Kim and Louis Schramm snaps the oversteer into turn 16. And there is the level of visibility the drivers are confronted with.
So 24 minutes on the clock, and we are seeing fewer improvements in sectors or lap time now.
Not a lot of cooperation going on here, so, oh dear me, Kim Louis Schramm either isn't aware or is choosing not to, as the Gulf Audi goes around the outside, swings through, and now has managed to clear the 66, and he can get on with his own particular task. I'm to see where that 30 Audi is in overall positions. It is currently still in 7th place, so Jean-Baptiste Simonauer, frustrated by maybe losing the best part of, well, 1 lap and then the start of this current lap. So 2 laps he feels he could have had a better performance out of, so he's got to wait until he comes across start-finish line and then continue with a fresh attack.
And again, right up to the curb goes number 30, Jean-Baptiste Simonauer. I know you made your Freudian slip about Porsches. Well, he did come out of Porsches, so you're allowed that one. We'll give you that. Jean-Baptiste Simonauer, very quick in Carrera Cup before coming into multi-mark GT racing. And that car currently is to be found 7th. And as we said at the start of the session, heading to Silver Cup honours within the Endurance Championship. Don't forget that in Fanatec GT in Europe, we have Endurance, and we have Sprint, and we have the overall. We've got that combined championship. A 63 Lamborghini accelerates up towards the line. It's Albert Costa now at the wheel of it.
Yeah, currently 3rd quickest. Now, what is this all about? Oh, somebody went, there we are.
It's number 14, isn't it?
Yeah.
Big lose.
But he ended up pointing in the right direction, which is always a bonus, but coming to a standstill.
That was Stuart White, the very quick South African, having the spin, ending up in the white direction, I suppose. But anyway, he's rejoined, and that car, one of the 3 from the Emil Frey Racing fleet, back into the session. 22 minutes on the clock as Miguel Molina, another man that knows his way around Hockenheim extremely well, comes then now out of Spitzkehre. Speed building. Down now towards turn 7. We've got a Porsche in the gravel, but limping out the other side of it at turn 12, which won't affect, therefore, Molina's lap. He's taken over this car from James Collado. Right, so Molina, but he's down in the sectors, comes into the Motordrome, the stadium now. The Porsche that was in the gravel further up the road was 22. Yet again, that car's had a really checkered session. It's been the fastest for a time, but it's had quite a lot of offs. 22, Patrick Mathieson now, the Danish driver, ex-British GT racer at the wheel of it. Jules Gounon gets himself ready to go.
And you see, look, the car, the misting inside the cockpit of that car, that needs to be chamoised off. So Jules Gounon will be able to have good all-around visibility. For some reason, the Fanatec sticker on the top of the windscreen, which is mandatory, is being either replaced or has the water has gotten underneath it, and the glue has become unglued. A minor point, but in this session where there's nothing really of any importance, I think that's an interesting fact.
There you go, stick to it. It might also be that they are making their tear-off screens.
Mad Panda thundering down towards the stadium entry. So who is behind the wheel of the 90 Mad Panda? It's Sean Walkinshaw. Having spent a number of years racing out in Japan, he'll be familiar with monsoon-like rain, as is often the case.
It's good to have him back in Europe, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's good to have him back in European racing.
Yes,
sure.
I think, ultimately racing in Japan is a great opportunity, but I think if you're a European driver, you really would like to have a career back here. The good thing about racing in the Far East is that if you get into a very good team, you win a lot of races and you can earn extremely well. And these are professional drivers. They're not the AMs that make up part of the field that we have here this weekend.
We've just had an absolute best out of Miguel Molina in the first sector. Number 51 Ferrari has done the absolute best. So having said that the session was getting slower and wetter again, it is still raining, but the sector times, the improvements are coming. The Mad Panda has got some company now. There are more animals to be found in the garage. And there is Molina going through, but only in the first sector was he a real gun. So 9th he ends up.
Yeah, I suspect that that was due to the traffic that he's probably overtaken. There's a Porsche following, maybe that, but there's a Ferrari that they've found their way around. That's the 71, as there is the 51 in that 3-car train. So in these conditions, just there's no point trying to run quickly. I mean, okay, you want to maybe find a way around the traffic, but actually I would rather myself, if I was in that situation, just let that go and then wait for the track to be sufficiently clear to have another go at a single clear lap. So the 19 Lamborghini and the 51 Ferrari, sort of status quo for the best part of a lap now.
And again, you sort of measure the weather conditions off the spray in the air, don't you? But it's looking a bit better on this side of the circuit. And then I look out of the window and it's pouring down again. Jules Gounon is making his way down the pit lane with 18 minutes to go. Ooh, great big slide there, or running deep into the corner from Molina. He's got number 54 Porsche tucked up behind him. And 54 has been yo-yoing up and down the order, having been quick at the start of the session. It is Alessio Picariello at the wheel at the moment. And that Porsche is looking the quicker of the two, as now Picariello tries to find a way by. Of course, in order to do any overtaking, you've got to go offline where it's even wetter. So now he's absolutely stuck down to the Sachs-Curve. The Porsche shoveling the Ferrari along. This is number 2 Mercedes. This is now a sliding Stein Schotthorst, and he's done a personal best in the first sector, but lost down in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know whether the track conditions have improved or deteriorated. I think it's probably both have occurred as we look at Schotthorst coming through turn 1. As we look waiting for Molina to complete his lap, he was still in that battle. The Porsche behind looked actually quicker on different parts of the circuit than the Ferrari did, but nobody wants to concede track position. There's the 71.
So just under 17 minutes of the session to go. Ollie Milroy for Inception Racing now takes over the McLaren. This is the team managed these days by Bas Linders. And Ollie Milroy, who perhaps doesn't really get the recognition he deserves, underrated driver, comes down to the stadium. Nick Katzberg has put the Rover BMW up to 4th, by the way. So we might get a late flurry of times here if some of the teams are installing gun drivers, and you've seen that already with, for example, Milroy for Inception, Gounon for Acodis ASP.
Interesting, the quickest pro car is only in 3rd place, the 63 Lamborghini, the ML Frey Racing Lamborghini. So Ollie Milroy looks like he's backed out of it. Off has gone 87. That's at turn 1. And it is Casper Stevenson, the British driver, who's brought a bit of gravel onto the racetrack, but again gets going. For all the dramas we've had in this session, for all the spins, we've got through fine wood to touch without a full course yellow or a red, haven't we? Yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. We're back to 63. So this is Albert Costa. Oh, here I'm on wheel spin getting into the limiter there. You sort of suspect you've got the horns are right with Albert Costa right now. He just nailed that throttle. Runs again the curb and the exit of entry into the stadium, turn 11. Again, the limiter cutting in as he exits Sachs-Curve. This is a full throttle Albert Costa lap, I would say. Yes, I would go along with that. Whoa, flicks the car in. It always looks exciting to watch, doesn't it, an Albert Costa lap, and he accelerates now towards the timing line. So Jack Aitken had got the car going nicely. 3rd, Albert Costa goes through that lap, is a 54.876, fractionally down on the car's earlier best, runs wide at turn 1, finds more puddles,
and hops and skips and jumps back onto the circuit.
I mean, he is irrepressible. I mean, even in conditions like this, he's leaving nothing whatsoever on the table. Lorenzo Patrese.
Which is unusual, because most Costas I go into, there are things left on the table.
Anyway, Albert doesn't. He scoops everything up, and so currently in 15th place overall. So Lorenzo, personal best sector 1, losing a little bit of time, just under half a second in sector 2. Runs the high line through Sachs Curve. Then you can drop down to get a straighter line and therefore maybe get better traction. But I think he's coming into the pits at the pace he's running at.
It's very slow, I'll grant you that, and it's not exactly that he's trying to look for a clear road, or is it? He might be trying to let the traffic go. Yeah, he's staying out for another lap. So Lorenzo Patrese aborts this one. The car shimmies its way out of the corner. There was one car ahead, which he's now given half the length of the pit straight to. So whatever was ahead, he's tried to let go even further. He does not want to be compromised at all on this lap. I fear he might be. We shall see. Right, more dramas. This is Alexander West going east.
Yeah, down at turn 9, turn 8, turn 9.
Yeah.
So once you break traction in these conditions, it's very difficult for it to recover. So Lorenzo Patrese thunders his way down through that long curving turn 5. So he's catching the car that he backed off from. And he's now going to find himself in a group of cars, and visibility is going to pretty much deteriorate.
So Patrese, it's worth trying to let the traffic go, because he's quicker by 1/10 than he was earlier in the first sector. So he's improving his time as he comes then now down to turn 8, again touching the curb. I would say it's brightening up, but I'm sure the teams would disagree, saying that they're all wetter than mermaids' flannels.
Yeah, I mean, if you look directly out of the commentary booth, we can actually see little clouds as opposed to just a blanket of cloud. So I think that gradually conditions are beginning to improve, but with 12 minutes remaining, it's still going to be a sodden racetrack for everybody to go out. Whether anybody will go out and bother trying to improve on the time of the Boutsen Racing Audi, 1:53.626.
We haven't actually seen in this session, but it is on the road, or now back in the pits, it has gone out. The Sky Tempesta Mercedes, the Ham Racing Team entry, which had a pretty busy time at Spa. Eddie Cheever has just brought it in. Lorenzo Patrese goes through. Does he improve? And the answer is no. 15th he stays. Hits the curb, but gets away with that. 11 minutes and change on the clock. So right now, it is the Boutsen Audi that is the fastest, and Albert Costa goes way into the gravel, coming into the stadium, coming through turn 12.
He should have brought a bucket and a spade with him. He could have built castles. He'd been so far off into that gravel.
Right, he's back on the road, and look at that, a wasted lap, an absolute best in the first sector.
Yeah, I mean, but look, the guy was nailing it through sector 1, almost half a second up, just too hot into turn 11 and couldn't slow the car down. And fortunately, the gravel is relatively, well, it is compacted by the rain, so he's able to drive through it and then get back onto the rather sun-scorched grass that lines the infield, the stadium section of this racetrack. So there is the 93, first time we've seen that car within, what, an hour and 30-odd minutes, 35 minutes.
So just 10 minutes of the session to go, and number 32 now has got Calvin van der Linde behind the wheel of it, so that's another car trying to squeeze another improved lap time out of this before the end.
So van der Linde, again, is having to cope with slower traffic directly ahead of him. It depends where he may catch it, whether he can get clear coming out of turn 6 up into turn 7. So not an awful lot he's going to be able to do through 7, but into 8. He stays wide, and he goes wide, and he runs wide. So looking forward, thinking, where am I going to get through? The consequences are you make an error. Oh, again, just trying to get the power down, and runs again very, very coming through the exit of turn 10. So headlights flashing. I doubt anybody's going to pay any attention to anybody having headlights flashed into them. Oh, again, Van der Linde back end stepped out, caught him unawares, and again he goes tippy-toeing through the gravel.
And also off has gone 26. That's the Santalok Audi. Nicholas Bart at the wheel of it. Nicholas Bart trying to rejoin, but he's facing the wrong way. That, I would offer you, is between turns 8 and 9. Gets going again now. So with less than 10 minutes to go, it's all happening.
It's kicking off now. Albert Costa's just that was the 14, I beg your pardon. So there is the Audi. It was actually with the back end was going under braking, so it was inevitable it was going to end up off track. But there's tons and tons of runoff now around. And has he got a puncture, or is he? He's certainly coming slowly. Just maybe I thought with the indicator going, he may have a problem, but maybe just also waiting to let all the traffic that was catching him go through and not impede. Is that the 87 or 88? Look how bad the camera lens, the poor cameraman down at the Sachs curve has been bearing the brunt of this weather throughout the morning, and the camera lens really unable to clear that amount of range. So there is the 98 BMW. We saw Augusta Farfus behind the wheel when the session kicked off, then Nicky Katzberg, and still Nicky Katzberg behind the wheel.
So Katzberg comes towards turn 2. Still got. It is definitely brightening, I tell you, that we can see far more of the surrounding of Hockenheim than we could even 20 minutes ago. And the track is getting busier. People are pressing on.
But as yet, no one has managed to eclipse the time set about 20 minutes ago now by the Boutsen Racing Audi, 1:53.6. So, I mean, while I think the ambient, or not the ambient, Nicky, and there is the 32. Whereabouts was all that? That was coming into the stadium again. That was at Kelvin van der Linde still behind the wheel of the 32. All a little bit messy as we come to the end. 7 minutes remaining, and yeah, it was never ever going to get round on the racetrack. It was always inevitable it's going to end up deep off into the gravel, and that will scoop up goodness knows how many kilograms of rubbish and whatever on board. Just never really turned in. .24 deeply buried. Now that might be the first time we do see a full course yellow. That isn't Kelvin van der Linde, that's somebody else.
It is. It's 33, isn't it? Which is Arnold Robin. Yeah. And he's a driver that's got quite a number of behavioural warning points to his name, sadly.
Whether they will throw a full course yellow or not, they're giving him the best opportunity to get it rolling, whether he stole the engine. But, well, if he's careful, he could maybe drive himself out. It was restricted in visibility to see who's coming around, but there's not a lot of movement other than the wipers. Everything else seems to be shut down. I think he feels probably he's too deeply buried.
Yeah.
And if we do have a full course yellow, well then I think that's the session concluded. 5 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
And a frustrating period for it to happen just as the road is drying, and perhaps that's why we're seeing more people going off now, because they're taking more chances. Red flag.
Yeah. So
the race director gave him time to try and get the car going. It wasn't to be, and so now the session is stopped.
And effectively the session is finished, I would say.
Exactly. I think it will take more than 5 minutes to get the car out. So, having said we'd got through it without dramas, the session isn't going to restart. It will take longer than the 5 minutes, so that's it. But despite all the dramas, we got through an hour and 25 minutes just with the without drama, without a red flag or a full course yellow. But right at the very end, out it comes. So Adam Oteki, a happy man. He's the man that's got that fastest time of the session to his name. And so the session is not to be resumed, and this is the order for what it is worth at the end of free practice then, with Adam Oteki ahead of Enrique Chavez, and then Jack Aitken's time for third, Nick Katzberg fourth, Matteo Cairoli fifth, and sixth fastest time in the end to Raffaele Marciello. An order completely shuffled around by the conditions, by the fact that not every car had every driver in it, and by the fact that some cars stayed out for quite a few laps and others only did a handful. But out of 49, we did see 44 of them take part in that session. And so the top time for the Gold Cup car of Adam Oteki, it was 1:88, second fastest. Enrique Chavez doing the time in the Garage 59 Pro-Am entry, and then the best of the pros, number 63, which Mirko Bortolotti got in right at the very end, but that was the best of the pros. The best silver, Jean-Baptiste Simonard, 8th fastest. So 42 times, 44 cars went out, but we didn't get a time out of the Yanis Fitcher, Jordan Love, Alain Vallon car, nor from Brendan Leach, Isaac Tutumla Lopez, Yusuf Ovega, which I thought actually was one of the first cars out. This is how it looked at the start of the session. Much greyer, much wetter than it does now, with the drivers all lined up, ready to go. '31 was one of the early spinners, Diego Menchaca in the WRT Audi. Others pressed on, including the 83 Iron Dames Ferrari, Rahal Fry being the early driver behind the wheel of that car. 88, Raffaele Marciello left it late to go out. When he did go out, pressed on. And they had a moment. It was a big, big lose from the 88 Mercedes. Spun it around, rejoined. Got going again. It wasn't the only one. Valentino Rossi losing it as well as he rotated through the gloom, coming into the Motodrome, into the stadium. Took one of the corner markers with him, but again was able to get going again. And then we had a spin from Dominic Fishley in number 22 Porsche. So the cars have had a wet start to the day. They will be back out again for pre-qualifying towards the end of the afternoon. They will be on track at, in fact, 5 minutes past 2. Busy day of action with GT4 with Renault Clios as well as Midjet here. Jack Aitken, another real star early on in that session. And number 63 Lamborghini was able to vault its way up towards the top of the times, but a good lap squandered when Jack ran wide and hooked 2 wheels into the gravel here, coming through turn 13. Enrique Chavez then took up the cudgels in number 188, the rebuilt Garage 59 McLaren. He did a good lap, but Alexander West had a spin, coming down through turn 8, looped it, and although he was able to get going, time was lost. Adam Oteki then, the fastest, the number 10 Audi, looking really assured, and it will be 14:05 when we have the cars back on track pre-qualifying. For now, though, from John Watson and David Anderson, it's goodbye from a wet Hockenheim. See you later.